Hello and welcome. In this one I'm going to do a loose charcoal drawing. It's a landscape with a winding path and some trees. If you want to see more content and full-length videos, you should check out my Patreon. Now for the sketch. Just I want to divide the scene in two parts, but with a sloped line like this, maybe. And then I want to have something like a winding path stretching forward into the foreground, some bushes, trees, more trees, and then some trees in the midground and closer, no, maybe a little bit further apart, but closer to the foreground. For the sky, should I have some clouds? I don't know. Let's just shade it a little bit. This is not going to remain that dark. These lines should disappear once I start blending. And they should become a lot softer. Piece of paper towel, paper tissue. I blend like so. Of course it's much lighter, maybe even too light. That happens often because the vine charcoal doesn't really stick to the surface of the paper, so you move it around and it gets a lot lighter. So what will often happen is that I simply add a little more. And that'll make it a little bit darker, though usually not much. Maybe a few clouds. I'll tell you what I'm going to try to do with them. I'm going to try to make them follow the angle of this slope. Now, it's time to produce some darker values. Like I said, I want to have some trees and bushes here. Let's see. Right. Just trying to get a conical shape of a coniferous tree. I don't want to make it too regular. Here I'm going to go in with some soft charcoal pencil because this part of the tree is in the shadow, so I want it to be a little bit darker. And a few touches of darker value here and there. Trying to produce a texture, maybe something that looks a little bit like foliage. And then I'm going to throw in maybe another tree behind this one. Maybe something a little bit taller and darker. Blend this with a brush. As you can see, this one will be obviously a little bit more impressionistic because I'm not really trying to work out all of the details. And I'm working with vine charcoal again. I used vine charcoal to shade the sky, and now I'm using it to shade the terrain, except this time I'm going to put down a bit more material, press a bit harder, and push it in with my finger to make it stick a little bit more to the surface of the paper to get some darker values. So I want all of these trees to look like tall, tapering, coniferous trees. Something like firs, Douglas firs maybe, or something. But I want to introduce a little bit of randomness in the shape of the branches and everything, so that they don't look too uniform. People often ask me about fixing drawings and fixatives, and I've talked about that as well on a number of occasions. With charcoal, I use fixatives, any type, any brand of a fixative. Even a hairspray will work, by the way. I know some people don't like that, but it does. So any type of fixative, I usually have Kohinoor fixatives, and because there are no adverse effects on charcoal, I tend to use copious amounts of it when fixing charcoal drawings, especially if I've used something that creates more residue, more dust, something like charcoal powder or vine charcoal. As you can see, I'm drawing another large tree because it's closer to our viewpoint, and some of its branches are now obscuring some of the trees I drew previously. I'm not too worried about that. Sometimes I just draw some of the elements in the background, and I end up drawing on top of them as I'm sort of modifying the appearance and the composition of my scene. That happens. There is no strict plan, either in terms of the exact appearance of the elements or the arrangement of the elements or the composition. So all of it is subject to change during the drawing process. But I also don't worry too much about the exact appearance and the details and the amount of detail within each and every one of those trees and other objects. Back to working with vine charcoal, and with vine charcoal I'm going to shade the rest of the terrain here. Because it's a very quick and easy way to shade it. So here, as you can see, I'm defining some of the smaller details on the tree trunk. It doesn't really take much, just a few suggestions of details, like a few of those branches at the bottom and a nice contrast between the light side and the shadow side of the tree trunk. Where the part of the tree trunk that is just under the canopy is darker because the canopy is casting a shadow onto it. And also the part of the tree trunk or the side of the tree trunk on the right is darker because the light source is coming from the left, as is the case in many of my drawings. But I'm going to have to remember that and stay consistent with that light source, because I'm going to want to have some shadows being cast from left to right. And that will make the terrain look more convincing and more three-dimensional. Just adding a few more branches just to make the shape a little bit more random. This is the medium charcoal pencil again. I used some of that. I used a little bit of that soft charcoal pencil at the bottom. But as you can see, I'm back to using the medium one. And I've often mentioned this, but the medium charcoal pencil is my main drawing tool when it comes to working in charcoal. I use vine charcoal for the shading, sometimes more, sometimes less. And I use the soft charcoal pencil for the darker details. Sometimes I use it sparingly, just adding a few touches of that darker pencil, that soft charcoal pencil. But sometimes I use a little bit more of it. Sometimes, I don't know, like here, the bottom part of the tree will be pretty much done with a soft charcoal pencil. To make sure this remains dark, but also to cover it a bit more quickly, I'm just blending with my finger. Very quick and easy way of doing those larger, darker areas. So I shaded a little bit more of the background behind that tree, and I'm going to add a few more trees there in the shadows behind these two. And now, as you can see, I'm adding those shadows which are being cast from left to right. You see, that's the thing about drawing, even when you're drawing something that is a bit more impressionistic, which is with just a few suggestions, like a few well-placed shadows, you can get something that looks realistic, because the viewer immediately gets the sense where the light is coming from and where the shadows are being cast. And all you need is a couple of shadows and a couple of objects casting them. You don't really need that much. Just adding another tree here in the distance. The Tombow Mono Zero eraser, I want a few lighter branches sticking out of the shadow, creating that contrast. That'll make for a nice detail, but also on the other side I want to have some darker branches which are in the shadow. Those I have to draw with a soft charcoal pencil to create that contrast, or a sufficient amount of contrast. Now I'm back to using the Tombow Mono Zero eraser, but this time I will use it to draw some of the lighter parts of the canopy. That way the canopy of the tree in the which is closer to the foreground is going to stand out against, or slightly show up against the shadow parts of the tree behind it. I shaded the rest of the foreground area on the other side of the path. I don't have to worry about the exact shape of the path. I'm going to go side to side like this, just to push a little bit of charcoal dust onto the path, because I don't want it to be that light. I want it a little bit darker. But still, it has to be quite a bit lighter than the grassy area around it. I'm adding some grass in the middle and softening it with a brush. I want to make it look like the two lanes are well trodden, while there's a little bit of grass left growing in the middle. And I also want to make the edges of the path a little bit irregular, but the thing about its shape is that it has to become wider at the bottom where it's closer to our viewpoint, and then kind of taper and wind away into the distance. I'm adding a little bit more charcoal here and there and blending that with a brush to add a bit more variation to that, to the grass area. With a clean brush you can erase pretty much. Not as clean as with erasers, but as you can see, I'm lifting up some charcoal to draw the rest of that winding path. Because when the brush is clean, and if you've done the shading with vine charcoal, the vine charcoal doesn't stick to the paper and you can lift it off. The technique is similar to the lifting up technique used in watercolor. To finish things off, I'm just going to use another trick here where I'm going to drag the pencil, the charcoal pencil, allowing it to create a little bit of random texture, especially in the foreground area. That'll make the foreground appear more detailed. Because vine charcoal, when you blend it, it creates smoother areas. I want something that creates an illusion of detail. To create the illusion of detail, you need texture. And if you just drag the pencil, you can create a little bit of random texture. I'm going to put my signature on the right side, using that same medium charcoal pencil. The drawing is done. The scene is done. I hope you like it. Thanks for watching, and I'm going to see you in the next one. Bye for now.